Which tight ends in 2023 could lead their team in targets? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Before we get to it, if you could please subscribe to the channel and like this video, that would go far into helping us continue to grow. I think we're right around 220 subscribers. So we're going to continue putting out Dynasty content all year long. We're going to be here for you. Redraft, Dynasty Fantasy Football, we'll be here. So in today's video, I got to thinking, because I'm always thinking about fantasy football, just about tight ends. And, it's kind of a wasteland position. And if you could really find that gold value at tight end, it goes far into helping your team take home the championship. It's just, if you can find that positional advantage, slash value, that combination of two or one of those, it goes a long way. So I got to thinking about tight ends and the ones that could possibly lead their team in targets this year. Because when you're drafting tight ends, you want them to be either the target leader or second option on the team. So what I did is I went back, and I'm going to show you guys here in just a second. I went back and looked at since 2013, every tight end that led their team in targets and how they did in fantasy football. So let me share with you my Excel sheet here, guys. Make sure you can see it okay. Let me move this here. Okay. I know I'm blocking a little bit with my screen there, but I will move down, zoom in a little bit here for you. So if we look at it, there have been 41, I believe. Yes, 41 tight ends that have led their team in targets since 2013. So essentially, you get about 4 a year that it averages out to, right? The obvious ones, Travis Kelce, we know what, 6 of the last 7 years he's led the Chiefs in targets, and he's been either tight end 1, except for 1 year. He was tight end 2. Mark Andrews, we know what he's done. He's done it 3 years. Delaney Walker, a guy that was a really good tight end in the mid-2010s for the Titans, led his team in targets for 3 years, and he was a top 7 tight end, 7, 4, and 6. Greg Olsen with the Panthers led it 3 years. Again, he was third. He was tight end 7, tight end 5, tight end 3. Massive finishes. We have Jack Doyle for the Colts. He had a tight end 8 1 year, tight end 17 another year. We'll get to that in just a second. Darren Waller with the Raiders, tight end 3, tight end 2. Zach Ertz with the Eagles, tight end 2, tight end 5. You see the trend here, right? Evan Ingram did it twice with the Giants. Tight end 5 his rookie year, tight end 6, 16 in 2020. You're seeing it down here, guys. You're seeing the list of guys. Jared Cook surprisingly did it 3 times. I don't think many people would. That's a trivia question. Most people wouldn't know, right? That Jared Cook led his team in targets 3 times, but he had a tight end 12 year, a tight end 16, tight end 5 year. Rob Gronkowski only did it once, which is kind of funny, especially when you just mentioned that Jared Cook's done it 3 times. But basically, what the numbers that we're getting here, and it shouldn't surprise people too much. Basically, if you are leading your team in targets as a tight end, you're finishing very, very well in fantasy football. And it may just sound self-explanatory, like no duh. But of course, we get the special talents, the Kelce's, the Mark Andrews. It's more than just leading their team in targets. It's that these guys are elite players. But then you get a couple guys like the Jack Doyles of the world. He wasn't an elite talent. He was this good, solid tight end, was not a Kelce, a Mark Andrews, a George Kittle. He wasn't this elite talent at the tight end position. And he still had a tight end 8 season, basically due to volume. Another guy that comes to mind, Jared Cook, obviously wasn't an elite talent, just a solid tight end. He had a tight end 5 season due to volume. Charles Clay, he didn't have a great season. Cole Kmet last year, tight end 7. Kyle Rudolph, another guy who's never really lived up to the hype, was a solid tight end. But he wasn't like Kelce or Mark Andrews, right? But due to the volume, he was able to get a tight end 2 season. Tyler Higbee last year, a tight end 9 season. So obviously it's a combination of, are you just an elite player like Kelce? That has a lot to do with it as well, not just the targets. But there's plenty of examples of just guys getting targets And because of that, they are relevant. So I broke it down here. Of the 41 tight ends since 2013 to lead their team in targets, 25 of them were top 5. 25 of them. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. 25 of the 41. Quick math tells me that's like 70% or so. Sorry, I was way off. 61%. 61% of the tight ends that lead their team in targets have a top 5 season. And then you add another 9 that finish between 6 and 10. So that means 34 of the 41 tight ends here. Quick math, that's over 80% of the tight ends that are finishing as the target leaders are finishing in the top 10. And then you add another 2 that are finishing in top 12. And for most people, top 12, that's a starting tight end if you play in a 12-team league, right? So you're looking at 36 of the 41 guys, which is getting close to 90%, 88%, are finishing in the top 12. Yeah, with 83% of those in the top 10. So basically what it means is if you're leading your team in targets, you're probably going to be a top 10, definitely a top 12. There's a very rare occasions that you're outside the top 15. And if you look at it, it's just guys that failed to it was just low passing volume teams, or maybe guys got hurt on the team. And it was just kind of like by the fact that no one else was there, you became the target leader. Like Charles Clay only had 87 targets, led his team. I'm sure there's a lot of injuries there. Jared Cook twice, less than 100 targets, tight end 16, tight end 12. Jordan Reed, 84 targets, finished outside. The only guy that had over 100 targets and didn't finish in the top 12 was Evan Ingram in 2020. So obviously just not doing a lot with the catches, probably a very low yards after catch, yards per reception. Excuse me, probably very few touchdowns. So very good signs point to tight ends leading their team in targets, which is kind of like a no-duh, right? Now, basically, the point of this video is to break down who do I think this year in 2023 can lead their team in targets, and who, and by that I mean they have like a better than 50% chance. And there's 5 guys, in my opinion, that have 50% at least, a 50% chance or more to lead their team in targets. 2 obvious ones. Travis Kelce is like a 99%. The only way he doesn't lead his team in targets is if he gets hurt. If he's healthy, even for 13, 14 games, he's leading that team in targets, no doubt. Mark Andrews, I think it's pretty safe to say like he's going to lead the team in targets. Again, this is assuming they stay healthy or play 14 of the 17, 13, 14 of the 17 games. I don't really see Mark Andrews not leading. I'd probably put it at like 85, 90%, lower than Kelce, but I don't see Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham. I don't see any of those guys leading the Ravens in targets. I think it's going to be Andrews again. Kyle Pitts is another guy I think at least has a 50-50 shot, right? You got to throw him up there with like 50-50 between London and Pitts. Is it as likely as Andrews and Kelce? No, but I think there's a really, really good chance that Pitts does lead the Falcons in targets, which is, again, to me, there's only 5 guys that have a really good chance at doing that. Darren Waller, another guy, went to the Giants. Just think about the Giants receiving room. You got a bunch of guys like that you brought in, a bunch of slot receiver guys that you brought in. You got Wan'Dale Robinson, who's coming off a major injury. Sterling Shepard coming off a major injury. You brought in Jamison Crowder. I'm just thinking, who else is there? I mean, Isaiah Hodgins is there, who's a solid player. Darius Slayton is still there, who's a solid player. But would you be shocked if Waller led the Giants in targets? I wouldn't. I think there's a really good chance that Darren Waller is the leading target getter for the Giants. We've already seen him do it twice with the Raiders. So why can't he do it with the Giants? I knew he's a little bit older, but he really literally fell into the best position possible on a team that doesn't have an alpha receiver at all. They have a bunch of guys, like they have a bunch of like number 3 guys essentially. And he's, I think, by far the most talented guy on that receiving core. So And then, the last guy on my list that I think has a 50% chance at least to lead his team in targets is Dalton Schultz. I think a lot of people are writing Dalton Schultz off a little bit just because he had a little bit of a down year with the Cowboys after his big year in 2021. He goes to the Texans, which I know we're not really excited about. But again, you think about the Texans, it's who do you have there? You have Nico Collins. Nico Collins, a lot of people like Nico Collins and think he's going to maybe take another step up. And maybe he does. But the fact of the matter is Nico Collins has never had 500 yards receiving in his career. And it's one of those things where you kind of see it, right? Like if receivers don't get to at least 500 yards their first 2 years, not many of them really break out. Who else is there? Robert Woods. Again, maybe Robert Woods can lead the team in targets. I wouldn't be surprised if he does, but he is 31 years old. Tore his ACL in 2021, so he's a year off of that, but he's getting up there in age. You have John Mechie, right? You have John Mechie, who I like. I think he's a good slot position player, but also, we haven't seen him play because of the unfortunate situation of where he had cancer. He's going to come back from that, but he's still very much an unknown. He was a rookie, second, third round rookie. So we just don't know what he's going to be. It's not going to be Noah Brown. Tank Dell, again, a rookie. We don't know really much about him. So my point is, Dalton Schultz could be the most talented receiver on that team. And you think of a rookie quarterback like CJ Stroud, if he starts all year, they tend to lean on and hyper target guys. And Dalton Schultz just may be that safety blanket underneath. When things break down and the pressure's getting to you, you just dump it off to Dalton Schultz. So those are the 5 tight ends that I can see leading their teams in targets. Kelce is almost a lock, basically a lock. Andrews is basically a lock. Pitts, I think, has a solid chance, maybe 50%. Waller, I probably put at like a 60-70% to lead his team in targets. And then Dalton Schultz, I probably put slightly above 50% to lead the Texans in targets. And you kind of just look at where these guys are going. Let me just show you their current average draft position. Again, a little skewed because it's a lot of best ball stuff here. But let me share this with you guys here. Obviously, you have Kelce going number 1. You have Andrews going number 2. That's a no-brainer there. A guy like Kyle Pitts, he's going 71st, 72nd overall. So what is that? That's round 6. That's at the end of round 6, right? 5 rounds of a 12-team league is 60. So, yeah, that's at the end of round 6 that he's going, maybe even early round 7 sometimes. And to me, I'm taking Kyle Pitts over George Kittle, especially with the fact that I can get him a round and a half later, right? You have to take George Kittle in the 5th round. You can get Kyle Pitts at the end of the 6th round, maybe the beginning of the 7th. The fact that Kyle Pitts, George Kittle, to me, has like a 10% chance to lead his team in targets. You got Ayuk there, you got Deebo Samuel there, and you got Christian McCaffrey there. If all those guys get hurt, yeah, he could lead his team in targets. Any of these guys could. But if assuming that everyone's healthy, what is the percentage that George Kittle is the leading target getter for that team? 10%, I think, is kind. Kyle Pitts is going literally the same spot as Dallas Goedert, another guy that maybe there's a 5-3. What's the percentage that Dallas Goedert leads his team in targets with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith there? Very, 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 very little. So I like the value of Kyle Pitts there and just his overall potential. I know people are concerned because of last year, and it's kind of crazy, but Kyle Pitts had one of the best rookie years out of any tight end in NFL history with over 1,000 yards his rookie year. Only like Mike Ditka had more than that. And the fact, I think he had 0 or 1 touchdowns was the only reason why he wasn't higher. But Kyle Pitts proved it. And Mariota wasn't the solution for the Falcons. I'm really high on Kyle Pitts this year. You see Darren Waller going 76.5 overall. So that's completing 5, 6. That's in the 7th round. That's, mid 7th round. I love that value for Darren Waller. Again, he could lead his team in targets. And if you do that, there's a really good chance you're a top 5 tight end. And then look at Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz all the way at 118th. So what is that? That's in round 9, late round 9, maybe round 10. You can pick up Dalton Schultz, who again could lead his team in targets for the Texans. I think he has a way better chance at doing it than David Njoku, Pat Freiermuth, and Evan Ingram. I don't think there's really any chance that those guys lead their team in targets. Maybe for Pat Freiermuth. So, just something to think about, those 5 guys. There are 2 more guys I want to mention that I think have like a very outside chance, even if all the guys stay healthy on their team, like a slight outside chance. Like I'm talking about like a 15% chance, maybe 20%. Maybe that's too high. But if everyone stays healthy, Chig Okonkwo for the Titans, we think Treylon Burks is going to be the lead target getter there. Maybe DeAndre Hopkins is if he comes here. If DeAndre Hopkins comes in, throw that out the window. I mean, I still like Okonkwo, but he's not leading the Titans in targets if Hopkins comes in. I think there's like an outside chance that Chig Okonkwo leads the Titans in targets, even if Treylon Burks is fully healthy. I don't think it's likely, but there is a chance. There is a chance. Chig Okonkwo was really good with the limited play that he had last year. And you just look at like he had a basically from week 11 on 5 targets, 2 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets. Basically in those 7 games, he had 31 targets. So you're looking at over 4 targets a game there. And you just kind of stat that out. Almost 4.5 targets a game. And you stat that out. And, that's only like 80 targets in the season or something. So I think something would really have to go wrong if Treylon Burks doesn't get 80 targets. But maybe there's a chance that Chig takes a step up and he gets to like that 5.5 or 6 targets a game. And then, he's that's basically putting at over 100 targets a game. I think there's a chance. And then the last guy I mentioned, who's basically on no one's radar. By the way, Chig Okonkwo, you can get basically where you can get Dalton Schultz. But the last guy is Mike Gesicki. And Mike Gesicki, now on the New England Patriots, is essentially free. He's going 181st overall, and that's in round 15. He's going early in round 15. Essentially free. Maybe if you take the approach of you don't get one of the top tight ends and you throw a couple darts at a couple late round tight ends, which is a solid strategy in my opinion. Mike Gesicki is not a bad target in my opinion, especially in a 12-team league. He's on New England, and you just think about New England. They don't have a super alpha receiver there. I know they have Juju. Juju's there, and Juju probably is the favorite to lead that team in targets. Who else is still there? Hunter Henry is obviously there at the tight end position. Tyquan Thornton, we just don't know what we have with him. Juju only had 101 targets last year. That's not a crazy amount, especially being on the Chiefs. I know they spread the ball around, but you would, if Juju was a legit number 1 receiver, he would have earned more targets in my opinion. I think he's a solid player. But I think there's an outside chance that they use Mike Gesicki in that slot role that New England has made Wes Welker and Julian Edelman fantasy studs over the year just from sheer volume. I think there's a chance that Gesicki's that type of player. He's not a traditional tight end. He doesn't line up as an inline tight end. He's essentially a big slot receiver. He's 6'6", 240, 250. It was only in 2021 that he had 112 targets for his team. So it's not crazy to assume that he could get another season like that in New England, just being that slot guy for Mac Jones. So just a couple guys to keep in mind in draft day. Again, tight ends that lead their team in targets. There's over a 60% chance they're a top 5 tight end. There's almost an 85% chance they're a top 10 tight end. And there's an 88% chance they're a top 12 tight end. Very few occasions where tight end led their team in targets that fell out of the top 12. So keep that in mind. And again, the 5 guys that I think have a good chance at doing that, obviously Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller, and Dalton Schultz. A couple guys that maybe to keep in mind in late rounds, Chig Okonkwo and Mike Gesicki. So that's all I have for you guys today. We'll be back with more fantasy videos breaking down stuff like this. And yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Again, if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you all